Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about variables. So, what are variables in programming? A variable is just a name that we give to some memory location that holds some data. So, if you want to use some data in your program, you store that data in some memory location, and that memory location is given a name by you. That name is known as a variable. So, essentially what variables then become are ways that you can store and access data in your program. So let's see how this is in detail. So here we have some abstract representation of the computer memory. Each of the smaller boxes here is one memory location in which you can store, say, one item of data. So let's say I have some data, right? And I want to use that data in my program. So the first thing I do is I let the computer know that I need some memory location where I can keep this data that I want to use in my program. Okay. The way that we do that is by giving the computer the name of the variable. Okay, so here let's say I tell the computer that I want a variable x. So what the computer is going to do, it's going to take this name x and allocate this name to some memory location in the computer's memory. So now this memory location is referred to by the name x, okay, by the variable x. This process is known as declaring a variable. One thing that we've missed out in declaring a variable that is really important is that anytime you declare a variable, it also needs to have a data type associated with it. What this data type does is basically it tells the computer which kind of data is going to be stored in that memory location which the variable points to. So here, if I try to declare my variable x, I'll have to declare it as int x. What this will do is it will let the computer know that I want some memory location, and so the computer will give me some memory location and call it x from now on. And the computer will also get to know that any value that I'm going to store in this memory location is always going to be of the type int or an integer, right? Now, how do we actually fill data into this memory location? So the way to do that is really simple. All you have to do is write a command kind of like this in your programming language. So if you write x is equal to 32, the computer knows that x is a variable, right? So x is basically the name of a memory location. So what the computer is going to do when it sees a command like x is equal to 32, it's going to take this data value 32 and store it in the memory location whose name is x. So here we see that the x variable is pointing to this memory location in yellow here. And when I write x is equal to 32, 32 is written into that memory location, right? This process is known as initializing a variable, which means giving the first ever data value into that variable or into that memory location, right? Now let's say I want to modify this number 32 and change it to some other number, say 16. So all I have to do is write this same code again. I write x is equal to 16, right? Now what this does is, again, it just goes to the memory location to which x points to, or it goes to the memory location whose name is x, and it overwrites the data there, which was 32 before, by the new data value 16. Okay, so this is all about how we declare variables and how we use them. But why do we even need variables, right? Why are variables essential? Why not just use values directly by writing them in my program? Why do I have to store them in my memory? So there are a lot of reasons for this. The first and very important reason is that variables allow you to deal with user given data. So when your program is running, you can ask the user for some data which has a lot of applications. I mean, almost all the uh, all the practical programs do have some kind of user interaction. So this interaction is only possible if you use variables, because you don't know what is the exact value that the user is going to give to you or give to your program, right? So you need to use variables for this that can store whatever value is given by the user. The second reason is that it reduces redundancy. So let's say I want to use a value 20,000 a lot of times in my program, right? So I'll have to keep writing this value 20,000, 20,000, 20,000, 20,000 again and again in my program. Now let's say this value 20,000 is changed to 15,000 in all of the places in my program. So to do this, I'll have to manually go to every instance of 20,000 in my program and change it to 15,000. This can create a lot of errors and inconsistencies in your program. Instead of doing this, we just store the value 20,000 in a variable or a memory location, and whenever we give a variable name to that memory location and use this variable whenever we want to use this value in our program. Now if we want to change that value, all we have to do is go to the memory location and change the data there, and automatically all the instances that this variable is being used will be updated with that new value. The third reason is that using variables makes your code much more readable and understandable by humans. So using variable names that actually have some context to the program that you're writing makes your code much more understandable, and this is really important when you're working in large teams or in a large company where there's a lot of code sharing and teamwork required. These are just a few of the advantages of using variables. You will come across a lot more when you actually start using these extensively in your programs and practicing more. So that's all about variables. Thank you for listening, and I hope you understood everything. If you have any doubts, please feel free to leave them in the comments.